BL, or boys' love, is a term with a controversial history, to say the least. Originating in Japan, BL refers to books, movies, or television shows created by women for women featuring male same-sex couples. These stories aren't written for the LGBT community, but rather for a straight female audience. And as it turns out, the fetishization of gay couples is really marketable. And thus we get an entire genre with content ranging from mildly concerning to mega yikes. And since about 2014, Thailand has been cashing in on this lucrative business. Unfortunately, BL series produced by companies like Studio Wabi Sabi and GMMTV also have their fair share of issues. Let's just say that Thai BL isn't known for good LGBT representation, often capitalizing on problematic tropes or overused stereotypes. But as with anything, there are some exceptions to that rule. That's where my homeboy comes in. In my last video, I mentioned my undying love for He's Coming to Me, which, guess what, was directed by this man. He's Coming to Me is one of the only Thai BL dramas I've watched that doesn't pander to the sexual fantasies of teenage girls and actually highlights inherently queer struggles. In other words, he gave the gays everything they wanted. Everything Off has worked on has social commentary on LGBT issues peppered in. This man is a force to be reckoned with. He uses this genre, which since its inception has catered to the heterosexual female fantasy, to completely flip the script and promote queer visibility and acceptance. Many of the shows he's directed directly criticize these popular problematic elements in BL. But although all of his works do a fantastic job of LGBT representation, nothing is quite as transformative or groundbreaking as Dark Blue Kiss. So let's discuss the importance of Dark Blue Kiss and its mistakes. Dark Blue Kiss actually has several scenes that directly address the struggles of LGBT youth in Thailand, but personally I believe that this scene in episode 5 is one of, if not the most impactful scene dealing with this topic. So, Pete is obviously frustrated that he has to try harder than his straight peers to receive his family's approval because of his sexual orientation. Pretty straightforward, right? You could totally just leave it at that and it would still be impactful. However, as highlighted by my research on this topic, this 2-minute scene alludes to many aspects of Thai culture that Western audiences may not pick up on. So let's look at this scene with a fresh set of lenses. In order to fully understand the context of this scene, I did a deep dive into surveys, interviews, etc. pertaining to LGBT culture in Thailand through the years. Here are some excerpts I found particularly interesting. From a study conducted by the UN in 2014. Arguably, the greatest and often most important struggle that Thai LGBT individuals face is the struggle for family acceptance. Being respectful to the wishes of one's parents and upholding a family reputation is fundamental to how a Thai individual conducts their life. It can thus be argued that for some Thai people, including LGBT individuals, it is acceptable to be gay, lesbian, or katui as long as one is a good citizen and performs one's duties to the family and the nation. These include financial support, looking after one's parents, getting married and having children, among other duties. But asserting one's sexual identity may go against the accepted norms of morality and bring shame to one's family. The fear of bringing shame to the family and parents lead many LGBT people to remain closeted, move away from home, and struggle with self-stigma. So, all of that to say that one of the fundamental aspects of Thai culture is being a dutiful child and a productive member of society. This stipulation, especially within a heteronormative society, can work against its LGBT citizens. For example, having children. Thailand is just now getting around to legalizing civil partnerships for same-sex couples, as well as legalizing adoption. And as we've seen in Western countries, even after gay adoption is legalized, it is still excruciatingly difficult for same-sex couples to become adoptive parents. In a society where differentiating from the norm is perceived as sinful or shameful, it's understandably difficult for LGBT youth to uphold a family's reputation, when their very existence could bring shame to their household. Pete struggles throughout the series with internships, grades, and learning English. He feels like he isn't good enough for his dad. He mentions his embarrassment at family gatherings when his dad can't boast of Pete's accomplishments. This is not simply frustration at his academic performance, but also commentary on how society expects him to be a quote-unquote better person to make up for the fact that he is a man who likes men. So when Pete says, "I'm good because I want to be," not "I have to be a better person than everyone else because I like men," he's rebuking that long-implemented social norm that being gay is a setback, that it's something that must be hidden or repressed in order to be a productive member of society. And of course, I'm not informed enough to speak for the entire LGBT community of Thailand, but I can imagine that hearing that declaration would be cathartic. That you are not immediately a bad person just because you're different from others. That your identity isn't a setback to becoming successful. And the best part is, this isn't the only instance of validation and encouragement for Dark Blue Kiss's native LGBT viewers. Kao is forcibly outed, and the show goes to great lengths to show us the damage this inflicts upon Kao's mental health, as well as providing us with a tearful and sincere coming out scene. Kao's mom tells him, and by extension the audience, that there is nothing shameful about being yourself, and that parents are obligated to support and embrace their children. Dark Blue Kiss, more than anything else, demands that LGBT youth be loved and acknowledged by their families, even if that means damaging a spotless reputation. Another thing I really appreciate about Dark Blue Kiss is its eagerness to include LGBT characters as side characters, as well as main characters. And most of the time, their sexualities are addressed in passing in a sort of de facto manner. They aren't there so we can just point and say, "Look, he's gay." They may address an issue in passing, but these characters do not solely exist to provide commentary on LGBT issues. Dark Blue Kiss has this wonderful balance of using their characters to promote progressive ideas while not allowing their sexualities to become their defining personality trait. Take Kitty, for example. When talking to Mork about how she and Sun broke up, she mentions nonchalantly that she now feels more attracted to women and she's thinking about getting a girlfriend. And like 2 seconds later, the scene ends and the characters move on. Kitty's character isn't centered around this single statement. In fact, it's never mentioned again. And this goes back to LGBT characters being portrayed in a de facto way. This comment is treated as simple, mundane, of no importance whatsoever. And that's good, because that's saying it's normal. It's not a big deal. Sometimes you don't need a tear-jerking revelation or a hard-hitting confession to have a proper coming out scene. Sometimes it can be as simple as a passing comment. Dark Blue Kiss has this beautiful ensemble of LGBT characters, some whose sexualities are constantly referenced throughout the show, some whose sexualities are only background noise and affect the story in subtle ways, and some whose sexualities are of no real importance at all. The show tells us you can use your characters to discuss LGBT issues, and you can make your characters LGBT without needing a real reason to. These statements can coexist. And for the most part, Dark Blue Kiss excels in expressing these characters' sexualities and examining these social issues. And yet... So now I get to the not so fun part of the video. I don't have that many issues with Dark Blue Kiss, but this is definitely the most alarming one, at least in my opinion. Now, the big problem with Non is rooted in the very existence of his character. Why does Non exist? Does he have any relevance outside of progressing Pete and Cow's narrative? Short answer, no. Non is arguably the sole antagonist of the series since he poses a threat to Pete and Cow's relationship. His only goal in the series is to spark tension between Pete and Cow, and he succeeds. But here's the catch. Pete and Cow are already teetering on the edge of conflict even without Non's interference. Pete repeatedly pressures Cow to come out to his friends and family, but Cow is hesitant to go public with his relationship. That tension in itself could drive the entire story. But I guess we can't have nice things, so we get Non to escalate the situation. And not only does he succeed in driving the main conflict, he succeeds in making the audience despise him. If you don't believe me, check the comment section of any episode involving Non. There's this almost universal desire to beat the shit out of this dude. It's low-key really funny. Until it's not. Most viewers didn't really jump on the Non-hate bandwagon until the midpoint of the series, right when Pete's distrust for Cow soars to an all-time high. So what I'm trying to get at here is that it seems like the writers purposefully engineered this character to be the metaphorical punching bag for the audience. Rather than criticizing Pete's behavior, we can simply point to Non as the reason for his possessiveness. Rather than considering the pre-existing issues in Pete and Cow's relationship, we can blame Non for their growing distrust of each other. It's just kinda lazy to divert blame from your main characters to an easily dislikable scapegoat. And that would have been the end of my complaints, had it not been for Non's relationship with his father. The writers kinda try to humanize Non for a fraction of a second, but this actually ends up making everything kinda worse, in my opinion. Non's father is blatantly, aggressively homophobic. This obviously puts Non at odds with his father. On top of that, Non's father is not so subtly shown to be verbally abusive. He never once shows affection for his son and uses intimidation tactics to basically control him. So my theory is that Non's behavior is motivated by his desire to rebel against his abusive father. To be clear, I don't think this aspect of Non's character is bad in itself. Giving an antagonist a motive or a backstory can make a character's narrative more nuanced and three-dimensional. However, Dark Blue Kiss fails to add depth to Non's character, despite giving him a reasonable motive. Because, like I said before, it becomes clear that the writers intend for Non to be completely, unquestionably, irredeemable. Non is in no way three-dimensional because, again, he is a metaphorical punching bag for the audience. He never truly shows remorse for his action and has almost no redeeming qualities. The addition of this abuse storyline doesn't really affect his actions in the slightest. It's just kind of peppered in there and never really expounded upon. But the ending. Oh, the ending. The ending is the terrible icing on the already bad cake. So, Non's involvement in the story ends with Pete exposing him for falsely accusing Cow of assault. And while Non should absolutely face harsh consequences for doing so, the writers decide to handle this retribution in a very alarming manner. Non isn't punished by the police or by the school as far as we know. The last time we see Non, he's being dragged away by his father to be dealt with. His homophobic, abusive father, who just discovered his son has been manipulating the boy he has a crush on. If this isn't setting off alarms in your head right now, it should. We know for a fact that Non's dad is verbally abusive, but we really don't know how severe this abuse really is. And so, to look in the comments and see people commenting on how Non is getting what he deserves, yikes. What Dark Blue Kiss does with Non's character isn't just lazy. Non's storyline promotes a message that is misleading at its best and harmful at its worst. Because no one, no matter how childish or insensitive, deserves to be abused by a family member. And it's just so disappointing because I see so much missed potential. I feel like we could have done without the mess that was Nan's character and simply focused on Pete, Kao, and struggling with identity and discrimination in a heteronormative environment. Having this artificial instigator to exaggerate their problems, it's just so much less compelling. Now, my ragging on this aspect of the show may give off the impression that I dislike Dark Blue Kiss, which isn't exactly true. Yes, I strongly dislike how they handled Nan's character, but overall, I really like this show. The reason I'm so critical of Dark Blue Kiss is because I see so much missed potential, because I see the hard work put into the portrayal of these characters and into the production as a whole. I don't think there's another show in this genre that tackles LGBT issues so well and so frequently, and that's not something to be taken lightly. Dark Blue Kiss doesn't feel like it's catering towards a straight female demographic. It feels like genuinely good representation. Same-sex couples are never hypersexualized and treated like equals to their straight peers. It feels like a step in the right direction. And I'm not the only one who thinks this way. While writing the script for this video, I came across an article discussing Dark Blue Kiss. The article reads, "Dark Blue Kiss presents the home as a restorative space for the gay child. There is nothing wrong with uprooting oneself from home, especially if the space cultivates hate and discrimination. But don't we all want to be accepted and welcomed at the spaces most familiar to us? Don't we all want our coming out to be a process of coming home? I think of Dark Blue Kiss when I think of coming out. I believe coming out is a favor we do not exactly for ourselves, but for others. We don't come out because we want to find a place in this world. We come out because we want to let others find a place in our lives." Hey, thank you so much for watching. I will definitely continue making stuff like this, and I encourage you to subscribe if you want to be updated on what I'm doing. School's about to start, so I'm gonna be swamped with stuff to do, but hopefully I can get some more videos out in the next 2 months or so. So I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you so much for watching.